우리가 처음 만났던 그때 향기 그대로 그때가 앉아 있었던 그 벤치 옆에 나무도 아직도 남아있네요. 살아가다 보면 잊혀질 거라 했지만 그 말을
Now, if you're a K-pop fan, you might recognize this song. It's called Boom 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 by Roy Kim, and it translates to Spring, Spring, Spring. Well, we chose this song as our opening signal because many say that the Korean peninsula is on the verge of spring, that spring is on its well. Well, is it really? Or is it bitter, frigid winter in disguise? Well, we're going to find that out here, right here, at 2018 Summit, the Super Preview. Now, we're going to talk about that here at the 2018 Inter-Korean Summit, and coming to you live from the main press center here in Ilsan Kintex, which is about 30-some kilometers from the border truce village of Panmunjom, where the two leaders will be making a historic meeting tomorrow in less than 24 hours at the Panmunjom. The first time in more than a decade, that is. This is super preview of what to expect and what not to expect from the 2018 Inter-Korean Summit, April 27th, 2018.
나는 오늘 베를린의 교훈이 살아있는 이 자리에서 대한민국 새 정부의 한반도 평화 구상을 말씀드리고자 합니다.
북과 남은 정세를 격화시키는 일을 더 이상 하지 말아야 하며 군사적 긴장을 완화하고 평화적 환경을 마련하기 위하여 공동으로 노력하여야 합니다.
남과 북은 양 정상들이 합의한 데 따라 2018년 남북 정상회담을 2018년 4월 27일 판문점 평화의 지대에서 개최하기로 하였습니다.
Well, with the historic 2018 Inter-Korean Summit less than 24 hours away, I have a wonderful group of panelists here with me on stage. I'm going to work my way from my very left, Dr. Kim Tae-hwan, professor at Korean National Diplomatic Academy, with decades of expertise both on and off the field of diplomacy and international relations. One of my favorite panelists to have in the studio. Great to have you with us.
Thank you very much for having me
and
today.
And to his immediate left, Dr. Andrei Lankov, one of my go-to experts as well on North Korea issues. He's from the former Soviet Union. He attended the Kim Il-sung University in North Korea, a longtime North Korea watcher himself. And to my immediate left, Dr. Kim Jun-hyung. He's one of the architects of President Moon Jae-in's foreign policy. They go well beyond and back to 2012, professor at Handong Global University. Good to join us. And last but not least, one of my favorite people, Dr. Kim Ji-yoon, Director of Public Opinion Center at Asan Institute for Policy Studies. Her expertise lies on U.S.-South Korea relations and all around, really. She used to be one of our hosts at Arirang TV as well. And I'm Kanyang Jennifer Moon, Chief Editor at Arirang TV. And for the next hour, we'll be discussing the Inter-Korean Summit tomorrow, how South Korea played a role in achieving the summit, what we can expect from the summit tomorrow, what we should not be expecting, and what kind of a role it will play in the upcoming summits as well. So we have a long discussion, but a fruitful one, hopefully, and without further ado, we'll jump right to it. Now, first question I will shoot at my experts. Now, last April, we were talking about the Korean Peninsula being at the brink of war. We were talking about April madness, disaster in April. This April, we're talking about spring being on its way. Rory Kim is singing Boom Boom Boom. Why the sudden change of air? Why the abrupt change of attitude, behavior by Kim Jong-un? What drove this third-generation leader to, one, meet with the leader of South Korea and the US, and two, just days ago, declare that it will halt all nuclear missile activities, tests, and close down its Punggye nuclear test site. So why this abrupt change? I want you to start off, Dr. Andrei Lankov.
Well, I believe that last year was indeed extremely dangerous year. Maybe the most dangerous years in decades. Most people sometimes grossly underestimated how close the Korean Peninsula came to the brink of a real shooting war. And such a development, of course, was not welcomed by the North Korean leadership. On one hand, the entire crisis began because of their ICBM and nuclear program. But obviously, at some point, maybe some point in late, say, last year, November, I would say it happened late November, North Korean leaders, and especially Kim Jong-un, decided that it was getting a bit too hot, that there is a possibility of military strike by the US escalating into a war, and this is not what they wanted. Second, economic sanctions, which were also part of the crisis, which are not having much impact on the North Korean economy right now, but they are bound to have some impact in near future, so they want partial relaxation of these sanctions. Third, the situation in South Korea, where they have Moon Jae-in administration, which is very favorable towards the ideas of economic and political and cultural exchanges with North Korea. It's an opportunity which should not be missed. So combination of all these factors and basically decisions that, well, probably we have been a bit too harsh, probably we are not getting what we hoped for, at least for the time being, maybe we should try a different way. This combination obviously pushed North Korea to talks in hope that probably now less emphasis on the nuclear and military issue and much more emphasis on the economic growth and economic exchanges with South Korea and the outside world.
Do you want to weigh on this?
Yes. You know, we have a Korean proverb, I think, the deeper the night goes and the sooner the morning comes. I think everybody realized this couldn't be true because nobody wants war on this peninsula. And there are a package of reasons because Pyeongchang Olympic is there. And President Moon, as he said, it's not an overnight dream. It's been his vision and it's a lifelong dream. And then, of course, North Korean new leader, Kim Jong-un's decision. I think this is like a strategic decisions to change his route. I don't think it's just cheating or postponing or taking time to complete the nuclear weapon.
All right, yeah. I would argue that, well, actually, Kim Jong-un, Mr. Kim Jong-un, for that matter, and North Korea, I think is placed at the moment in a critical juncture in aspirational change, meaning that he's placed at the crossroads between two different aspirations. The one aspiration for a nuclear power state, the other aspiration for a normal country. But then I just want to take a look at the specifically the utility of North Korean nuclear arsenals. The Kim Jong-un has long claimed that it's North Korean nuclear capability is a quote-unquote treasured sword of justice. But then alas, it turns out to be a double-edged sword. We all know that sanctions began to bite. And also, if he moves actually in the direction of the nuclear weapon state aspiration, one or two steps further in that direction, that he has to risk a high risk of major war. And it means that the North Korean nuclear arsenal as an instrument of saber rattling has reached almost an exhaustion point at this moment. And that is, I think, the decisive reason why he has begun to turn to another direction, which is a normal country.
Now, Jae-in, some argue that it's the kind of the characters of the leaders in South Korea, North Korea, and the United States at this time. So the different kind of characters in these different countries at this time that have made possible this situation. Would you agree with that?
Well, as Professor Kim and also you introduced, President Moon Jae-in, he's very meticulous and he had a long time dream about this to happen. So I don't really think it's just happening overnight. So it's basically the fulfillment of his dream. In the case of Kim Jong-un, unlike we to know, he is actually the guy who is also very well planned. I would say this time around, what he's planning and all the summits and everything is actually well planned. In 2013, you probably remember that he said that he's going to go for the Pyeongjin policy, which is first you have to complete the nuclear power and then go to the economic development. So he delivered the first one, and then now is the time for the second one. So I think those two leaders are pretty meticulous and worked really hard, and they actually knew what they were doing. In the case of the U.S. leader, President Donald Trump, quite an extraordinary person, and I think Chairman Kim Jong-un didn't really expect that President Trump was accepting that idea at the spot. But luckily, I don't know. I think I would say that luckily he accepted the idea, which was, which we could never imagine any other U.S. president would do. So those all weird but very working well combination made this thing happen, I think.
Now let's jump back to the summit tomorrow. Let's focus on the summit tomorrow. Now we all know that negotiations are made before the summit so that there aren't major surprises when the leaders meet at the negotiations table and they meet this awkward moment. Now, there's a very good chance that representatives from Moon and Kim have made substantial agreements already and have drafted their joint statements to a certain level already. On which issues do we expect the two sides to have agreed upon already? We know that the key agendas for the issues are denuclearization, permanent peace on the Korean Peninsula, and improvement in inter-Korean relations. To what extent do we expect the two sides on highest level possible, excluding the leaders, to have agreed upon? Do you want to start off?
Okay. We have the three agendas. Two agendas, I think they're relatively easy. The peace, probably we could expect some kind of declaration of ending, putting an end to war, peace declaration, and some, specific, very tangible measures to reduce military tensions. Say, for example, make DMZ as a genuine DMZ kind of things. And as far as the restoration, improvement of North-South Korean relations, say, for example, we could regularize the reunion of separated families, regularize the high-level meetings, sort of things. But then the second most important agenda, I think, is, of course, denuclearization, because it is tightly linked to the upcoming Washington-Pyongyang summit. And then what we expected, what many probably Korean people expected will be, how possibly could we clarify Mr. Kim Jong-un's commitment to complete denuclearization. Mm-hmm. We already have a hold of his, he has some intention of his commitment to denuclearization, but in what way, in what specific way, particularly in North-South summit, could be expressed. I think that's one of the key points.
Let me add it. Okay, I think we should not forget the uniqueness of Inter-Korean Summit. Usually you're right. In the other summit meetings, you know, even what to talk, what to agree, already decided before. But Inter-Korean Summit, the uniqueness is we don't know yet. So actually it can happen at the site, on the site. We all agree, and actually our goal is denuclearization, peace system, and inter-Korean relations. But I think it's how strong can it be expressed by, especially by Kim Jong-un and an agreement. That's the key. That's the point we have to watch. Mm-hmm. And another factor we have to consider that is, this is the package, Inter-Korean Summit and followed by U.S.-North Korea Summit. So I don't think we can have like a detailed roadmaps, because denuclearization is not just inter-Korean issues. It's already, international issues, especially U.S. has the key. So I don't think really tomorrow's agreement can be detailed roadmaps. So in conclusions, it's more like how strong can this agreement be agreed, for denuclearization?
Well, on that point, I would like to say that there should be two messages to the two different audiences. For example, you have a South Korean audience, and then probably a lot of South Koreans are waiting for that maybe there's some declaration of ending war. It's a different story. Like peace treaty is very different and separate thing. But at least if there's any declaration like that, then people are really, I think, very excited. And then second, another audience is, of course, American audience. I don't really think there's going to be very detailed, as Professor Kim mentioned, that they're very detailed roadmap for the denuclearization. But there should be some, it should be some venue for North Korea to show that they're very sincere about the denuclearization. Because in the United States, in Washington, still there are a lot of people who criticized President Trump's decision to meet Mr. Kim Jong-un, and then to give enough of reason for President Trump and his staff members in the White House to meet Kim Jong-un without much opposition, then the North Korea should show that they are ready to talk and they're very sincere about this.
Well, I think I'm going to get to you right now, but there are those critics in the United States, and of course there are those in South Korea as well, who say that U.S. President Donald Trump and perhaps South Korean President Moon Jae-in as well, just by sitting down with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, just by doing that itself gives legitimacy to North Korea, recognizing it as a nuclear state. How would you counter that argument?
Well, I would say, first of all, North Korea is a nuclear state. It's just a fact of life. They have nuclear weapons, they have exploded. And we cannot ignore it. If we pretends that it's not spring, but say winter, it will have no impact on the temperature. We have to deal with the real world. And ignoring a serious issue is, frankly, very irrational and dangerous type of behavior. And other thing is that, contrary to what many of people say, I don't see that Kim Jong-un and people in leaders of North Korea care that much about their legitimacy or being recognized by the international community. Of course, they don't mind, but it's not the major problem. Nonetheless, we have North Korea. It has a large and growing stockpile of the nuclear weapons and delivery systems. And saying, if we are just talking to them, it's bad. Well, guys, how can you solve the problem? Or, personally, I believe that North Korean problem is unsolvable, but it can be managed. So how can you manage problem ignoring it, pretending it does not exist? It's not a good way.
So it's like diabetes. You manage it. You live with it and you manage it. But coming back to this, this summit, so on denuclearization, to what extent, to what level, Professor Kim Jun-hyung, do you expect the two leaders to come out of the summit with on denuclearization?
Okay.
Because I remember the chairman of the Summit Preparation Committee, Im Jong-seok, saying that North Korea has already declared that it will stop its all nuclear and missile activities and close down its Punggye nuclear site, correct?
Right.
However, a reporter asked, then what's there left to do for the two leaders to do when they meet? And he said that the leaders declaring that themselves would have a totally different meaning. Now, other than that, what do we expect? Something substantial needs to come out of that, right?
Right. I think choice of word is important. So far, we all know that Kim Jong-un expressed his opinion or his sincerity somehow to denuclearize. But this is different. You know, we heard from somebody, right? From envoy, from China, North Korea summits, but this is the site. The North Korean leader and South Korean leader agreed and declared the denuclearization. That's the key point. And second point is, to what extent, and choice of words. You know, for example, and denuclearized completely. I don't think really North Korean leader Kim Jong-un used the word CVID. That if we can get that, then no problem. That's the big success. But I don't think so. But before this, actually, we have some kind of misunderstanding argument about denuclearization. I want to correct that. Because many people say that North Korean leaders think term of denuclearization is different from American side, especially hardliners. Denuclearization is not the final event, so-called CVID. CVID is the final goal. Denuclearization is a process. But for hardliners in America, thing is, without CVID, you're not doing denuclearization. That's wrong. This is process. It's a moving forward. Already, like a closing down the Punggye, it's moving forward. It can reverse, but it's moving forward. The final stage is CVID.
Now, so tomorrow's summit, depending on how you assess the first two summits, inter-Korean summits, the summit in 2000, the summit in 2007, obviously some may call those successes, others may call them failures. Now, in retrospect, I think many would not call them absolutely successful inter-Korean summits because last year, this time of the year, we were talking about war on the Korean Peninsula. Now, how are we sure that 2018 inter-Korean summit is any different or will be any different from those two summits? Want to start off?
Well, first of all, one single most striking difference is the advancement of North Korean nuclear capability. I mean, back in, during the 7 years of Kim Jong-un's reign, we all know that North Korea has conducted almost like 80 intercontinental, ballistic missile tests, almost 90, and out of altogether 6 nuclear tests, he actually conducted 4, including the latest, the strongest one. Meaning that it's much tougher, than compared to 2007. The other side of the same coin is North Korea has now a stronger leverage. Nuclear weapons, not as an instrument of military demonstration. As I said, it's almost reached the exhaustion point. But as a bargaining leverage, I think he has a very stronger hand. That's a big difference. Okay? But then on the side of the same coin, South Korea and the United States, thanks to a fantastic division of roles between President Trump and President Jae-in, allow me to say that President Trump playing the role of bad cop, and President Jae-in playing the role of good cop, consistent engagement policy. We have a very good combination here, and also we have a bunch of time to consistently push North Korea toward when Kim Jong-il utilized nuclear weapons as a bargaining chip. But then its intention, preference, Kim Jong-il's intention, preferences could be shaped, could be modified by United States and South Korea. So we have to do, it's a good environment, good division of labor, and good time frame. And then I think it's really good for us to push Kim Jong-un in the direction of a good country. And some conditions, conditions that, which is a very difficult term, but then I don't want to go into the details. Some conditions met, I think why not? Could be a really take on the track of a good country, meaning that on the right track of relinquishing the nuclear weapons. So in that sense, I think there's a big difference between 10 years ago and now on both parties.
Well, I do want to hear from all of you, but I'm going to allow all of you to have a chance to ask questions as well. So I'm going to turn it over to the floor at this time. So please raise your hand if you have any questions. Now, once you receive the microphone, please identify yourselves and your affiliation. And for time's sake, we're going to have to limit one question per person. So raise your hand if you have any questions. Yep. We'll start from over here, the gentleman in dark sweater. And please address who your question is to.
I'm Guido Santavecchi, foreign correspondent for Corriere della Sera, Italian Daily. To Dr. Lankov. Dr. Lankov, if last year we were on the brink of maybe nuclear war. War. Yes, yeah, of a war. Do you think that now Kim Jong-un is really sincere and or not? Just tactical or strategic decision?
Well, what do you mean by being sincere? If you are asking whether he is going to surrender all his nuclear weapons overnight, the answer is definitely not. He is not going to do it. And given the experience of last 20 years, there are good reasons to understand why the North Korean leaders see their nuclear weapons as the only guarantee of their regime security. But it seems that facing a very strong and sometimes I would say excessively strong reaction from Trump administration, he has decided to slow down and reverse his course. For how long, I don't know, but I hope it's going to be a long-term decision. I don't believe that denuclearization is possible because it goes against long-term interests of the North Korean elite. Nonetheless, what they have done over last year was a bit, I would say, an overkill. They did have done far more than they would need for their security, and it's quite possible that they decided to back up, stop, and maybe stay on a lower level indefinitely. And if this is the case, well, it's maybe not a good news, but it's something the world can live with. Because, yes, there is a great deal of things on offer if North Korean government agrees to lower down the level of tension and reduce its nuclear potential.
May I respond to that? Because I have to respond because we have always different opinions.
Yes, I know you do.
Yeah, okay.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, that's a good thing. I think this time everybody's talking about deja vu. So what makes it, and, you know, especially after 25 years and finally completed a weapon, why now, you know, North Korean leader can give up? Yes, he can give up because let me give you several reasons. First, there is a dilemma called late developer of nuclear power, because to survive, they developed a nuclear weapon. But because of the nuclear weapon, they threaten their life. So if price is right, this is the time that Kim Jong-un can give up. The second, he has been consistent, even from childhood, to make his people rich. Now, he has a weapon. So that means he can get a lot of things in return if he gives up. I'm not saying he must give up, no. If price is right, that means he has, in that sense, he has a sincerity. But as I said, if price is not right, he can go back. But I don't think this is, from the beginning, there is a cheating. I don't think so.
Okay, I'll take next question. Soo-young from EPI.
They're working so hard.
Hello, this is Soo-young from UPI, and I'd like to ask any of the panel members, really, in your opinion, what kind of agreement tomorrow would make the summit a success?
She stole my question.
That's
so
simple.
As I said, I mean, you know, we have three agendas. First of all, if there is some, you know, clarification. I mean, I'm not here saying that a particular specific roadmap to denuclearization, but then on the first agenda, some clarification of Kim Jong-un's commitment to complete denuclearization in whatever forms. Okay, we could have various forms, but I said clarification because as Professor Kim Jun-young said earlier, we heard that, but then through indirectly. Okay, we just read his lips. That I think it's one of the success indicators. Okay, and then peace. Or I would be quite satisfied with the peace declaration, although we had before in 2007. 2000 numerous times, but then this time, as I said, because we have in totally different situation, I think a peace declaration or a declaration putting an end to war, which will lead eventually a peace regime, would be a great achievement.
Well, in the first place, it's really hard to see unsuccessful summit. So that's the first thing to note. And well, if you want to see if that's a success or failure, then you can just compare joint statement in 2007 and this time 2018. And I think we all mentioned that. Well, there's if there are some peace or ending war declaration or enough of a reason for Trump come out to the table for to talk a denuclearization, that'd be great. But it's always in the eyes of the beholder. Some people will say that really tremendous success. Other people will say, well, you just couldn't reach it this far. So I'll just give it to you.
10 seconds. Okay. Whether to put denuclearization or not, that's the key. That's the success or fail.
And I have to give Dr. Lankoff a chance too.
Well, I would say I don't expect that much from the tomorrow's summit, because its task, I believe, is to lay foundation for the further development. Not only summit between President Trump and Chairman Kim, but further development in relations between North and South Korea. So if leaders meet, have a nice talk, and maybe sign some important declarations, I would agree with Professor Kim if indeed denuclearization is openly mentioned. I would say, even though I don't believe it's possible, but in a few years' time, we'll see who of us two has been right.
Okay.
It's a rare case when in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, you'll know who of us is wrong and who is right. Wait for a while, just 10 years. But reference to denuclearization will be very good. And of course, it's important to have this official statement about the end of the state of war. I don't know how it will be put in nice English, Chonjon Sonon. But apart from this, it's basically about, kind of nice environment, because it's just the first step. Because if summit between US and North Korea works well, there will be time for next meetings, maybe not on such a high level, to discuss economic cooperation, interaction, cultural exchanges, and foundation should be laid tomorrow. Personally, I'm quite certain about tomorrow's summit. Unfortunately, I'm less certain about the second summit.
Well, part one of our discussion wraps up here, and we'll be back in part two. Well, regardless of the outcome tomorrow, history will be made when the leaders of South and North Korea meet for the first time in over a decade over that MDL in JSA, part of the DMZ in the border truce village of Panmunjom, where in 1953, an armistice was signed to end a war in a truce, but not formally to end a war. Now, we want to talk about the Armistice Treaty. There's been a talk about turning that into a peace treaty, or first about formally ending that war. South Korean President Moon Jae-in, for the first time, made reference to that, saying that that would require the two Koreas and the U.S. President Trump recently gave his blessing to that discussions. But how do you make up after a 70-year breakup? What's the significance here? What does that mean to formally end a war, and what does a peace treaty mean? Jae-in, do you want to kick this off?
Well, we have to, I think I have to clarify this. So the declaration of the peace or ending the war, it is true, there's a political rhetoric. It's not legally binding, but it is an initial and very important step towards the peace treaty. But armistice cannot be really replaced by the peace treaty because these two are separate things. I mean, armistice was signed by the commanders-in-chiefs who participated in the war. That's why we see the signatures of Mark Clark and Kim Il-sung. But the peace treaty should be done at the state level. So it's a pretty different thing. And that's why we need the United States. And if the declaration of ending the war is the initial step toward a peace treaty, then that's probably why President Moon Jae-in was including the United States when we declared that the war is over. So, to go to peace treaty, that's a totally different thing. And even though we agreed to do something and to make a peace treaty, that's going to take a lot of time, I have to say. I mean, you have to remember what happened in the San Francisco Treaty. It took like 6 years to be signed off and then go into effect. It took like 7 years. And then before we go there, you have to recognize North Korea as a legitimate regime, legitimate state, because a treaty should be done between the states. So there's a lot of things that we have to resolve in order to go for the peace treaty. But it is still very important, significant, and nice first step to declare, oh, the peace and the war is end.
Let me just add that I would like to make it very clear that armistice is a very strict military document, whereas peace treaty is a political document. That said, I think there should be two dimensions on peace treaty. The first one is simply a couple of papers, okay? Although it will take some years, maybe, at the longest. But then the second dimension of a peace treaty is that actually, I think it's international system, okay? Peace mechanism, institution, regional peace mechanism. And that's the place, precisely the place where China and Russia come in.
Why Russia come in? Oh. China, I understand, because they're a signatory of the armistice agreement.
Right, back in 1953.
Well, but nobody denies that Russia plays a role in Northeast Asia. Why we included Russia in six-party talks?
Yes.
It's de facto recognized regional power.
Right.
So to make the system like as stable as possible, then we could invite the stakeholders.
So are we talking about a multilateral framework for that?
Precisely.
For the stability of that institutional framework?
I'm not saying that Russia, we have to invite Russia, but then Russia would be more than willing to make her voice heard. Some role, aspirational role to play. Okay.
So I think we've delved into two different questions here. One is in terms of the armistice. So because the armistice was signed by different parties, UNC, represented by the US, North Korea, and China. So do these parties need to come together again in order for them to, I suppose, cancel the armistice and formally end the war and sign something to replace the armistice and sign a peace treaty? And then I think what Russia comes in is where we form something like a six-party talks, but not necessarily like six-party talks, something of a multilateral framework.
Yeah. Okay. The difference here is we're starting like a 2 and 3 and 4, 6. Six party, lastly ratified, that's nice. But I don't think all the parties at the beginning is going into play. I don't think it's a good idea. And regarding peace treaty and ending the armistice treaty, it can happen at the same time. So in the history experience, it can happen in the same time, ending the war and the peace treaty. But it can be separate, and especially the ending the First World War actually is 1918 December, but peace treaty in Paris finally agreed on next June. So it took 6 months, and she talked about several years. But I think it's very important to declare the ending the war. Denuclearization, the first agenda is coming from US and us to North Korea. But second agenda, peace system, is inter-Korean agenda and Korean agenda. I don't think the blessing from the Trump coming from himself. I think that agenda actually started, I interpret that started or given by President Moon, and Trump accepted it. So I think it's another important point to watch is whether to use 종전선언, the declaration of ending war, or abstract word of we don't want any war anymore and things like that. So that's the point that you have to watch.
Well, one thing to answer, it's actually very confusing, as a matter of fact. So I have to consult with my colleague who is the expert in international law. And then what he, according to him, so I can not be responsible that much. You don't really need China and the United States to sign something that the war is end. So you can just declare the war is end. It can be done by the South Korea and the North Korea. But the reason why President Moon included the United States when he mentioned that we may declare, if we want to declare the war is end, then the three parties have to agree. And that's the probably he was seeing for the future, because he knows that it can actually lead to the peace treaty in the future, and that's probably because it's the initial step. That's probably why he included in the United States when he mentioned the declaration of war. But practically speaking, you don't really need the United States when you declare the war is end. That's according to my legal expert colleague.
Whether you know or not, actually 2007, actually there, the declaring the ending of the war. So actually, it was included in 2007.
Right.
So definitely, that's one thing that we will be looking out for tomorrow, whether the declaration of ending a war, ending the Korean War, once and for all, will be included tomorrow after the end of the summit. There are also talks of holding the meeting of Korean war-separated families on a regular basis. That's something North Korea has never really agreed to. Am I correct, Dr. Lankoff? Another thing is establishing communication offices on each side of the border. Why are all these very important?
Well, probably I will take initiative, because communication offices is long overdue. It's necessary to reduce the risks of misunderstanding, miscalculations, even when relations between two Korean states are bad. Maybe when relations are tense. The existence of such offices is even more vital than the relation in the good times like now. But it's the good times when we have to use the opportunity and establish such an office. Talking about divided families, it's a big issue in South Korean society. And we are running out of time. Another 5 or 10 years, and there will be virtually nobody left to meet their relatives in North Korea. So it's something which can be done. And once again, tomorrow's summit, unfortunately, it will be impossible to discuss many kinds of economic interaction, because most of such interaction will be essentially a violation of the UN Security Council sanctions. Therefore, we have to have first relaxation of sanctions and then economic exchanges. But it's possible to talk about humanitarian issues like divided families, like all kinds of cultural exchanges, maybe even some kind of tourist activities, and of course, some kind of permanent representation.
Now, so the U.S. will be watching this, the outcome of tomorrow's summit very closely, obviously. South Korea's Blue House announced yesterday that President Moon's National Security Advisor, Jong-un, traveled to the U.S. To coordinate different things, including President Moon's trip to the U.S. for a bilateral summit with President Trump in mid-May, after the Inter-Korean Summit, but before the Trump-Kim meeting slated for the end of May, early June-ish. Now, what is in the works here, would you say? And plus, President Moon has said that he would like to see this Inter-Korean Summit serve as a good guide for the Trump-Kim summit. Now, what is a good guide summit, Professor Kim Jun-hyung?
And actually, I talked to this to President when I met him as a member of advisory committee in the Blue House. I like the word guide rather than he used to use the word broker or matchmaker. that means we are out of it. So matchmaking and done. But guide means we are driving the car. So that means we can direct directions and we can limit, even though it's wider. So in that sense, after this Inter-Korean Summit, to have cooperation and to guide U.S. and to explain North Korean intention to him. So that means exactly role of the guide. We don't want to be excluded from after they meet or after we meet.
And Jae-in?
Well, I think it is well shown in his statement that South Korea wants to be in the driver's seat. This is North Korea and the United States summit, but this is also, South Korea's fate is also on there. You cannot really ignore and let them just talk and discuss whatever they want. So it means that he's not going to intrude that much, but he's not going to be left out, and he's not going to allow it happen. And that's really strong will by President Moon.
Right.
And Dr. Kim?
Yeah, I totally agree with Jun-hyung on his point, the role of guidance. Brock was, I think it's really, who made that word? I really don't understand. I would rather use the mediator or preferably facilitator. Yeah. The North-South Korean summit, the Kim Jong-un Trump summit, I don't think it's a kind of, some people argue that it's tomorrow's summit will be preliminary, and the other one will be main. But I don't think so. I mean, those two are total, complementary sequels. Okay.
They're inseparable.
Inseparable. Yeah. So, in that particular sense, I think the Moon Jae-in government role as facilitating not only summits but the whole process of North Korean denuclearization or North Korean marching toward what I call normal country as a facilitator. Yeah.
And Dr. Lankoff?
Well, I would agree probably with Professor Kim that the two summits are inseparable, even though tomorrow's summit is sort of preliminary. But without good success, without good initial success, you cannot get any good final results.
Well, so we've heard a definition of a good guy summit from all the panelists. At this time, I will turn it over to the floor once again and take your questions. Please raise your hand and identify yourselves and your affiliation and the person you're addressing the question to. And the gentleman here in the back, please.
Igor Belyaev from Russia TASS news agency. I guess my question will be to all panelists. In recent weeks, there have been a lot of speculations, a lot of talks about the possible place of possible meeting between Kim Jong-un and President Donald Trump, including Switzerland, Vietnam, or even Thailand. Where do you think would be the most realistic, the most optimal in terms of success, and the best place to hold such a meeting? Thank you.
Should I go first? Okay, always go. Let me go first. Okay, best place for us is Panmunjom, because that's, make sure that we are in it. But most possible, considering the big ego of Trump, I think it will be Pyongyang. He doesn't want to give up the chance that he wants to be a first president in. So he wants to compare himself with like Nixon in the Beijing. I know the advisors to him opposing now, and he doesn't say anything now. But I think at the final, if some agreement, if some big deal is possible, then he cannot pass the chance. So he will go to Pyongyang. Okay.
Well, it sounds like the question that who is going to win in the 2016 presidential election in the United States, and I was wrong. So I don't know, I'm not really entitled to say that, but I actually agree with Professor Kim. I mean, I know that there's a lot of options on the table, and Pyongyang seems like, out of the table, out of the options. But if I were President Trump, I'd definitely go to Pyongyang. This is the first president meeting the leader of North Korea and visiting Pyongyang. this is a huge highlight, all the spotlight and all the cameras and the mass media is pinning him. So that's a nice big show.
It will definitely outbeat the media coverage here. So maybe they'll go for it. Dr. Kim.
The place preference? Yeah. Oh, frankly speaking, I have no preference. But Ulaanbaatar will be because Mongolia has been so consistent in pursuing, in its the so-called central position between Russia and China, and their own a very consistent autonomous foreign policy. So I think Ulaanbaatar might be quite symbolic. But otherwise, I have no personal preference for site.
Personally, if you ask my bets, it will be Ulaanbaatar. Under better situation, have relations between Russia and United States would be better. I would say Vladivostok, but it's impossible now. So well, second best place is Ulaanbaatar because of combination of political situation, just technical details, how far the North Korean government planes can fly, everything. Yeah.
All right. If I have one last question, I'll take it. Yeah.
My name is Andreas Landwehr with the DPA, the German press agency. I have a question to Mr. Lankov. You said North Korea is a nuclear weapon state and we have to deal with it, or live with it, or manage it. But if Kim Jong-un comes out and says tomorrow, I support denuclearization, what is he talking about then? Is he talking about nuclear disarmament in a global sense? So if Russia, if US will disarm, then North Korea will join them? What does he mean by that?
I'm pretty sure that sooner or later he will say something like that. And I would like to remind you that according to the Article 4, 1968 Non-Proliferation Treaty, all nuclear states, including United States, China, and Russia, are committed to the eventual denuclearization. So if you're asking what does it mean, well, I just would like to remind you that President Trump, President Putin, and President Xi are equally committed to denuclearization technically. So what will follow is a completely different question. Personally, we have a great deal of disagreement with Professor Kim, and I hope that his optimism will be proven right, even though I'm pretty sure it will not. But God knows, miracles happen very rarely. Personally, I expect that it will be just a way to make negotiations possible. He will try to then talk about some freeze or arms reduction, downsizing of their nuclear force, which will be, of course, presented as movement towards denuclearization, but the complete nuclear disarmament, I believe, I might be wrong, is not going to happen.
All right, well, yes, we want to talk more, but this is all the time we have. I'd like to thank all my panelists for your insights today. I'd like to thank you all for being here, and thank you, my viewers, for staying all throughout. No matter what, we will witness history in the making tomorrow. Peace, a new start. Until then, bye-bye.
봄이 왔네요. 우리가 처음 만났던 그때 향기 그대로 그때가 앉아 있었던 그 벤치 옆에 나무도 아직도 남아있네요. 살아가다 보면 잊혀질 거라 했지만